And good morning, good evening, 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 and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei L. Bob. I It's morning time here, probably 9 a.m. give or take. I'm sitting on my neighbor's porch. My other neighbor's rat dogs are invading, and my faraway neighbor's dogs are suffering. It's The rich have come in and gotten all these holler dogs, blue tick and little dingo dogs, and which are very, very. They can be pretty obnoxious. But I had a dingo in Australia when I lived with the Aborigines. This dingo crew hung out with our tribe, and one of the mommies had a baby, and that baby got attached to me, and it was my dingo. And so I gave it a lot of affection, right? And one of the Jesus was born uh, by this Aboriginal lady who um, basically was she had been taken away from the tribe when she was a little girl and put into an Aboriginal school and tried to be brainwashed, and they trained her to be a nurse, but because she was black as coal, nobody wanted to have her work in their hospital or their doctor's office. So she went back to the tribe, all nine of them, in the early 60s. Canadian Nazi uh, mineral company came in finding coal, uridium, titanium, gold, and oil on their land in the Nukumba. Just went and shot everyone in the head, 900 of them, and killed the tribe. And there were about 10 out picking berries who didn't get whacked, so that was what was left. And when they came back, the social services, oh, we had to take the little girl away. So they did. And, the miner company never ever got even, because they just went out and shot everyone in the head, and left them. They didn't bury them or anything or hide what they did. They just left them out there in the desert. And, you know, and that's Australia. That's its heritage. They say it's a criminal continent, and England sent all the criminals there, but they didn't. They sent their crazy sociopath, psychopathic, rich folk who couldn't, like a good example was Jack the Ripper. He's the Queen's cousin. He was the surgeon to the court, and he was raping and murdering and slicing and dicing up women in London. Well, as long as he went after the poor and the prostitutes, it wasn't a big deal. But when he started going after the merchant middle class, well, so he had to go. So, they didn't arrest him, they didn't blame him, they didn't make any big deal. They just kind of put him on a boat and sent him to Australia. And it wasn't they didn't have pickpockets there, and they had like rich people, right, who did unbelievably terrible things and couldn't stick around in England because it would embarrass the aristocrats, and they were sent off. And ever thus, right? Every situation is very similar. And right now we are going into a situation where, nothing's changed. It's the same as it ever was. Um, Now, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. I am your Sensei L. Bob. I'm your griot. I tell you stories. Don't believe a word I say, right? Um, and a griot just keeps rolling, right? And so as long as it's like a monologue like this, it's not a problem. But when it gets to be you're in a conversation, it can be a problem, right? And so Lana, uh, hey there, Jane, was talking to me. Uh, the other day, and she was live on the show, and we were talking about stuff. And she has her sensibilities about things, which I respect. And I was telling a story about my great aunt, and that my great, everyone has a story like this. They have people in their family who are like, everyone doesn't want to talk about. So my great aunt was the last of the rich of the robber barons of my mom's Irish side, and she had a twin brother, and they were like, and he's the only one she loved, and you know, and she was quite. My mom was an amazing, beautiful woman, and she got a lot of that from my great aunts, and from her mother. Her mother was this German woman who was quite. But German women are always quite amazingly beautiful, and then they gotta have a few kids and all that schnitzel and good baked goods by the time they're 40, you know. But that's okay. That's how it rolls, right? And every part of our life there is you know change, change, change. But the Irish side, if they stay in a certain realm, the women stay pretty attractive for the rest of their life. I mean, they too, if they eat schnitzel and eat a lot of baked goods, But that's not what the Irish had. They had nothing, so everyone was always pretty skinny. Anyway, so I was talking about all of that, and Alana was like, "Don't you have any shame?" Blah blah blah. And so like I said, she had a sensibility, and that was fine, And then she kind of started, not hitting on me, but going like this, and which is fine because Lana is like the Xena, the warrior princess of truce validity, right? And that's great. I love her, I respect her, and she can, do this to me all because I need it, And I want to play you something that's a good example of this. And I've been bumping into people in the last few weeks that are this recording. And I'm just going to, when I bump into them, I say, hey, I'm going to just record audio, right? And get their story and then play it back to you, just like I do the phone conversations, just like I did with Lana. Now, someone said, just when Lana was really getting at you, everything went blank. Well, the battery died in both my phone and my laptop. First, the laptop went up and I went off, camera. And then, we talked a little bit more and my phone was, so Lana and I are like this, and I love her so much. She can say anything to me and I don't get upset. I mean, pretty much anybody can say anything to me and I don't get upset. But I want to play you this because one, it's frigging amazing. And two, it demonstrates my inability to, I mean, I'm a great listener, right? And that's why I can ask really good questions. But once I get into my griot mode, and so this really demonstrates that very well. And so I'm going to play it. And two things: the stuff this guy is talking about is off the hook, and he is the real deal. Everything he's talking is exactly it because he's talking about things I know about, and I investigated it, and I, took it to ground, and everything he's saying is true. So here we go. You should enjoy this. So this is almost 4 minutes in, and so I wanted to get people on here, to 3 people, to listen to this.
Out in the world doing that. In other words, our days are over. If this guy can do that, get rid of him. That's exactly what they do today. You know it. I know it.
He's talking about Jesus Christ. And he said mob days are over.
Killed by a car right here, and somebody comes out of the bushes and brings it back to life. They ain't don't want to know what we saw. We'll find out what that guy's all about that brought him back to life. We want to talk to him. You follow what I'm saying?
The bottom line is when Jesus Christ came here and he brought the good news was we were all like him. We were just asleep to the idea. And he was nothing really special. He was a lucky bastard who was sent here to wake us up.
Right.
And that's what he
pretty much so.
Yeah. And him going into the temple and throwing the money changers out, those guys are like the bankers of today. And he said, screw this. This is what it, like you just said, it's not about money. But we are ruled by the golden rule. Who has the gold rules, right? And
You know another thing they said to Betty Hill is, and
Right.
Bonnie Bolt?
Right.
You do realize you have to live in a policed world.
What was that?
You do realize you must live in a policed world.
Right, and they're the policemen.
No, they're not the police. The world you grow up in, you have to be policed. You have to be, whether you want it or not. You won't own this building.
So why did they say?
You live in a policed world.
Well, we do, but why do we have to live in a
We
police?
don't.
Right,
That's what they're trying to say. We do not live in a policed world like you have to.
right.
Everybody listens to the Bible and does what they want.
Right.
The Bible is the manual for this planet.
Only in a
So-
business. What it is a business manual. It's not like the owner's manual.
Right. Have you heard of Betty Ann Gray's?
So this guy was at 14 walking down the street, and he lived right next to a SAC base. I told him my dad was in the Air Force, and we started talking about that, and he really knew about SAC. I mean, it was right on his front lawn, and so he started taking off, and he was telling all these stories about the Air Force, and this major who lived right next to him, who would come a little buzzed, and because those guys in SAC, my dad was one of them. Always on alert, always on at the end of the world, gonna start World War III and kill everyone. I mean, that's a little stressful. So they self-medicated with alcohol like men do. And so this major would come and visit them and tell them stories of all the stuff he's seen, right? And he was at because he was in the world, the only nuclear bomb wing of the U.S. Air Force. He was in Roswell, and when the flying saucer, he was out there picking up the stuff off the desert floor. He was, had the men, and he was there. He gathered the bodies. I mean, there were three of these guys. They were all alive. Two of the soldiers shot two of them because they were freaked out. Third one, he stopped them because he was a major. Don't do that. And they took him back to Wright-Patterson Air Force. He was all the way. So this guy who you're hearing, he was a kid when this major told him a story when he was a little drunk in this kitchen. And he would take him, put him in his car and drive him to the Air Force Base and show him, the atomic bombs and the this and the that. And there were always lights in the sky over, and this is a base in Maine near New Hampshire. And there was always not aircraft lights, but flying saucer kind of lights, and stranger lights, right? And one of the things he saw basically was a Stargate, and he saw things coming out of the Stargate. I mean, these guys don't fly a zillion light years, and then get here. No, they come through a doorway. Bango, they're here, right? And a lot of them don't even need to come through the Stargate with a ship and land. They can just like walk through the door in their closet and come out in the closet of your house, right? And walk through walls and doors. And he told stories of all this, right? In a very short time. And it's obvious this guy's been, he's been affected by all this stuff. So anyone who will listen to his story, right? But I kept talking, right? And that was the problem. So what he's talking about here was he was walking down the street one day, out in the country near the air base, and all of a sudden he felt, it was nighttime, and he's like looking, and the moon was up there, and he, for some reason, stopped, turned around, and there's three guys, right? Two little grays and one other person who was taller, didn't look like the grays, didn't have the almond eyes, wasn't quite all human, and wasn't quite all insectoid. It was like a hybrid, right? And so he looked at him, and he smiled, and they smiled, and well, the grays didn't smile, but the hybrid did, and he heard everything in his head, and the thing that they were talking, this hybrid was telling him things, and one of them was that your planet is policed, and you have to be policed. And I was confused by that, right? And I thought that they were saying they were the police and they were policing us, but no, he said, that's not what they said. They said that they weren't police because their consciousness was raised enough to be responsible and understand that the world was the planet, the universe, everything was a opportunity to grow and that there was abundance everywhere. But for that small little group of power hungry reptiles, they have to police us, right? Keep us under control, get us addicted to things, make us be traumatized. But you don't have to do that. And then I said, "Oh, so these guys are come to free us?" And he said, "No, we have to do this ourselves, right?" So I'm just giving you that little backup. Now we're going to go back to this. Right?
Have you heard of Betty Ann Grayson?
I've heard of it. Who is Betty Ann?
All right, Betty Ann Grayson lived 40 miles away from Betty Hill.
Right.
She lived in
Betty
Lincoln,
and Bonnie Hill.
All it is taking place around these airbase. Kathy Bean and I, and she's still alive today. I can call her on the phone
L.L.
right now.
Bean.
We can discuss what we used to watch flying around that
He
airbase.
went to, knew
It
that.
wasn't nothing normal that we saw. We saw one come out of church one Sunday morning. It looked like a silver cigar at 10 o'clock in the friggin' morning. Hovered in the air.
Do you know what that was? The silver cigar was a submarine. You know, the submarines that you...
And see, I had to interrupt him. You know what that was? I mean, I'm telling he's been there, he saw it, he knows what it is. And I said, you know what that is, right? And I'm trying to impose, just like a policeman, my worldview of it, because I know that once once the Nazis perfected anti-gravity, the bell, the Glock, they had these generators, and yes, they had their own Hambu kind of craft that they had during World War II, and that in the late 40s, 1947, when Roswell happened, and we got the National Security Act, and in the late 40s and early 50s, DC was being just inundated by flying saucers. I mean, we couldn't stop them, we couldn't catch them. It's Cold War. And everyone's seeing them, right? And so it was like played way down on the media didn't really, but it was pretty hard to play that shit down. And very similar to what happened in Las Vegas with the Las Vegas lights, right? Oh, those were flares. Oh, like it's Roswell was a weather balloon. So, but this guy, he's the real deal, right? And there are other people around him. So anyway, I'm gonna go visit him again and shut up next time. But I'm gonna play this thing for you because it shows that even your Sensei Al Bob can be influenced by this police state, and I'm acting like the policeman, right? Now I'm aware of this, enough to be, hey, I'm doing this, and I'm going to, and I'm, conscious intent enough to next time shut the fuck up,
The submarines that you worked on, they were used as extraterrestrial. Meaning, half the things that we see in the sky are ours.
Yeah, I got to tell him.
Terrestrial. Our
knows
technology is at least
He was there. He
years
lived it.
ahead of where
I've just
Walmart
studied
is.
it.
And when you said we have to live in a police state, that's a police
I
state.
didn't say police state, police world.
Okay, police world.
You
Yeah.
will live in a police world.
until you don't have to. Until
Right.
you
You
wake
die and
up.
go to heaven. Death is just the beginning of a new life.
Right. It's because we are not. See, everyone thinks they are their body. We are not our
That's
body.
a town.
I'm getting to the point that
We're not even our soul.
let it out about what they know about these characters.
Right.
It'll destroy our economy. If
Right.
the earth
That's what Brookings said. We can't talk about this because it would get rid of our economy, our churches, our political structure. It would all go away.
Right.
And we are being forced to be at the place. I would say that sometime between the 4th of July
I'm
and
imposing.
Halloween, the
like a
aliens are gonna
policeman.
land
I'm
on
doing
the front
exactly what
lawn
he
of
said,
UN
right?
and give it up.
They can't do that. They have orders from the Supreme Being. Do not interfere with them.
Right.
Study it.
Exactly. Those guys can't do
See,
it.
I
But
have
the
to
Nazis
impose,
who are out there in
once he
space
says
can
stuff
come
like that,
here
it
and
triggers me.
pretend
Once
that
he's
they're
talking about
them
the Supreme
and say,
Being,
hey, you got to do
oh, I
what we
know it's
say.
not just, you know.
I'm just telling you what I saw actually happen in
Right.
life.
He's just telling me what he
This guy
actually
drove a
saw.
black 57 Chrysler New York.
I'm talking about what
the
I
man in black.
believe.
It was Major Hogan drove this convertible.
Right.
You guys want to take a ride over to the airbase and look at my airplane? Yeah, we do. We get in it. The top would be down. He'd drive up to the front gate at Pease Air Base and they'd salute him.
Right.
Super
They knew who
secret
he was.
place.
Right.
His front and back license plate for a New Hampshire car at that time registered said B-47 Pilot. That's what it said on the front plate and the back plate. He can come down the Spalding Turnpike 200 miles an hour. And you don't bother because he's going after
Yeah,
the airplane.
he's going to get on his airplane.
You better believe it. We're at war. We ain't got $3.5 million of coffee, which is cheap. We couldn't even go to landing gear for that plane. You couldn't for $3 million. You'd be lucky. Why have an airplane with a 10-ton atomic bomb on it? Somebody's going to bomb you when this asshole's up in the farmhouse sleeping. We need that guy to fly that plane. As a matter of fact, he introduced me to Jimmy Stewart at these Air Force.
He lived it.
Jimmy was
I
running. He
studied
flew a B-47 in there and landed it. They opened the bomb bay doors on it while it was coming down. This is in front of thousands of people. Stewart was flying that airplane. He was an experienced fighter pilot and bomber pilot from World War I, World War II. It was only experienced people who were going to get their hands on the controls of that airplane.
And he was good advertising.
Yeah. He ran the ejection seat in the hangar. Jimmy Stewart, a small statue percent, pulled the lever, and the kid sat on an ejection seat. And it rolled you up to the top of the hangar on tracks. That's how we bail out of the B-47. The downward B-47, the downward ejection was another story, through the floor. The second one that crashed at D's, when it was taken off, the pilot said, bail out.
The guys went into the ground.
How did you know that?
I know the airplane. And if you weren't
His
at
neck
least,
was, his head was ripped off.
if you weren't like 2,000 feet in the air,
You're dead.
you're dead. So if you're taking off and you would jet straight down into the ground.
It was sad because we went by the place with the bomber crashed. We were trying to dump it in Great Bay. The tower told him you got fire coming out of the fire coming out of your rear well. That's the only thing they said. Your rear landing well was fire coming out of it when they were taking off, when they hit potato. He panicked. There were young pilots then. Major Hogan wasn't that old. He wasn't an old retired man telling us the story about it.
Was he in World War II?
He was a result of the 509 bomb group, but he was 20 years old or something.
That
He
was
was
the
probably
first
30 years
nuclear
old when he
weapon
landed it up.
bomb group up there in Washington.
And he liked us. He liked the family. He liked to come next door and shoot the ship. People don't understand. Like when his father said he designed an airbase that had something to do with it. How are you going to fuel 600 bombs? Think about that to your father. How are you going to fuel 600 bombers? What do you mean 600 bombers? Well, you got 300 B-47 from the 509 and 300 from the 817, which came from, I don't know where the 817 came from.
We're out on
But
the
you're
street
all
and that
packing-
radio's
packing a
somebody's
lot of
radio in the
firepower.
window.
You're all packing bombs. They're riding around this airbase with jeeps with a blue atomic bomb on the back of them. They had thousands of them stored down in the building. Yeah, as kids, we're watching them drive around with blue atomic bombs. They look like a
His
big
base
egg.
was right next to his house, right next to his public
Put them
school.
into the airplane. Everyone that left, what's the sense
No
of having
fence.
this Air Force if you're not carrying bombs? When you get the radio call to go hit Russia or something, we were at a war. They come out with that B-58. They put an announcement in the newspaper that one of those was going to leave.
B-58 is supersonic bombers.
It came in from the North Pole. It had engine trouble. It was a 4-engine jet. When it took off on the ground, it just spiraled out of sight. It flew through the solid form, climbing straight. The B-58 hustled. They came off. They stood it up on its tail and just wound it right into a spiral out of sight. The kids are standing there watching it, going through the sound barrier, going up. Then they knocked that sound barrier off after a while. They were bringing in these F-100s and whatever could exceed the F-100 could do 900 miles an hour. They throttled them back. They're breaking windows in town. But anyway, it was wide open.
So, Steve,
Riding
bomber,
around in
what
jeeps
was
with
your
atomic bombs
experience?
on the back.
Did you ever see a UFO?
I was contacted by them. If you want to know the truth.
That's what I want to know.
Contacted by them. They do all the talking.
So what? When? How old were you?
I
When
was about
that?
12 or 13 years old.
And they're in Maine.
It was in Newington, New Hampshire, by the airbase.
Okay.
It was on a Halloween night. It was around Halloween. And back then we had hay rides to celebrate Halloween. And I was jogging up the hill.
Right.
Next to the Knox Farm. The Knox Farm is still in existence today. I was talking to Kathy about this. And I was stopped. I was jogging up the hill. I was probably 14 years old, and I was stopped, and I turned around, and there were three of them behind me.
EDEs.
Right, three of them.
Okay.
And all they said to me was turn around and look at the moon.
Right.
And how they said that to me, they didn't say it verbally.
Telepathically into your mind.
They were suggestion I look at the moon.
Right.
And I smiled at them. I remember I could feel the smile on my face. I looked at him, and I said, no, I don't know if I was speaking verbally or mentally. Right? I said, I already know the moon is there. Turn around and look at the moon. 3 times that happened. I said, okay, I gave in. I did. I turned around and I looked up at the moon, and there were like six lights up there that were not the moon. Right. Something going on. Right. There was a contact made there. I believe they Yes. I believe they watched over me. I went home and told my mother about it, and her being the whore that she was. Men, the guys, the clothes, and all that. What have you been drinking? Or what the hell? What have you done? That's when your father get home and hears that story. I said, I'm telling you what happened. I told Kathy about it. She is alive today. We were talking about it not even a month ago. She said, Steve, we all came here in the same spaceship. We believed it was something as a result of World War II. The demeanor and the mindset of the American families in the 40s. The Beans were strange family. They were pricks. Somehow they owned a lot of property. The airbase built on their property, and they became millionaires, I guess billionaires, whatever they're doing today. They evolved into something beyond what they were back in the 50s. Right? They sold Army surplus shit, boots, rubber racks. Yeah. That's what got L.A. Bean started. They had tremendous amounts of land. Kathy said to me, we moved in next door to you. She said I was around 4 years old because that's when we sold all our land and they built the airbase. They didn't go
Kathy is a bean?
Bean.
So she's a bean.
She is a bean, yeah. They keep her locked up in a place in Florida, Fort Myers. They don't want nobody talking to her. They got money. To talk to Catherine, I said to her, if I drive down there to see you, she said, you're going to see me through a window. You're not going to see me in person.
She in an institution?
Yeah. Drugs and rehab is like the Betty Ford clinic. The Bean family put her in there. They're not so sure who they want going in there talking to. Because she says a lot of my stuff gets stolen. She's in cage rehabilitation. And I said, well, Kathy, maybe they're stealing your shit because you're a celebrity. Your papers, your books. She said, I'm not happy here. She's been there 6 years.
Holy moly.
So she's a lifer in there.
Right.
But she remembers.
Yep, and that's why she's there. If she didn't remember, she wouldn't be there.
Right.
I'm amazed you're not someplace.
Okay. I got on a school bus one morning.
Right.
And Bobby Duffy said to me, you won't believe what's parked in back of the Newington school. I said, no shit.
This is his public school.
I didn't say no shit. He said a B-47, right? Whoa.
The Air Force
back of the school. He said, yeah,
parked a B-47 right in their public
4 days
school.
before we figured out how to get on it.
That's what these guys
The
said.
first thing they do is they strip the engines off, right?
Not the kids, but the Air Force.
We went over in the dock. It was in the mud.
So why was that aircraft in the back of your school?
I can tell you why. They took some bulldozers and they flattened the pine trees. That was Air Force property. It was on the school end of the runway. Right? The school is still there today. They bulldozed down the pine trees and they backed it in with buggies, the pulleys, however they did it. They didn't drive
it into behind your school?
Behind the school.
Right.
We get off the school bus and there it is. Holy shit.
So is that supposed to be some monument?
Cold War, super secret, top secret weapon in the backyard of the school.
Who's ever engineering their planning or whatever they're doing, just park that bomb over there. Right. And the first thing you do is get the engines off. So the first thing they do is they strip the engines off. So there's 2 inboard, 1 on the outside. And the wings went way up in the air without the engines on. So we couldn't get on the wingtip, which on the ground, you could. It was, as a kid, the wingtip was right at this level because I bumped into it.
When the engines were there.
And the fuel tanks. If they had long-range tanks on it, I mean.
Exterior tanks.
Yeah, and they dropped those shortly after takeoff. They dumped those tanks.
That was there just to get them off the ground.
That and Jado.
Right.
Because you're going to deliver this weapon to the enemy.
Right.
There's no point in having all of this shit, including your father, if it's not going to work.
The bottom line about any of this stuff, right? The Russians, we made the Russians.
I had to tell him.
Right?
You fucked up by giving him half of Berlin. That was a big mistake.
Well, no, that was done on purpose.
Yeah, I know, but it was a big mistake doing it.
No, it wasn't, because what it caused was a high.
Yeah, I'm trying to impose, like a policeman, my geopolitical worldview.
Years, and that's what they want. They didn't want the world to come together.
Right.
And that's why that was. Russia was our allies. They were the, what would you call them? The loyal opposition.
It's still on. This thing in Ukraine.
It's the same deal. Right. We lived it. Right. The newer generations today.
This guy, he lived it.
The Russian soldiers were told when they went
I
into
kind of
Berlin,
lived it.
sure.
He's 77. He's 5, 6
when the
years
Russians went
older.
into Berlin, when they put 1.5 million rounds in there in 24 hours.
Rounds,
1.5
not
million
bullets.
rounds they dumped on Berlin when they got the okay.
Artillery shells.
Hitler committed suicide. The order for the day was rape every German woman you get your hands on. Rape every freaking woman.
Very similar to what's going on in the Ukraine. It's like their model.
The women were committing suicide.
And we gave it to them.
The ratio was astronomical. The women that were just killing themselves because the Russians are coming in, they're going to rape your ass. And when they did it, Eisenhower stood by and Montgomery stood by and just let them do it. Let them do it. You tell me where they got 1.5 million rounds to dump into that city.
We gave it to them.
1.5 million rounds.
We gave it to them. We gave it to them. Just like we gave North Korea and China when we were going, we were going to have to invade Japan, and after we dropped the bombs and they retired from it, all of that stuff that we had stuck in the Pacific, we gave to China and North Korea because we want them to have the Korean War. Because it makes money.
Sure. But there was
we have dropped $250 billion worth of weapons into Ukraine in 4 months. Lockheed and Grumman are just.
That's why our gas is so high.
Right. We're having a great time. No, there's plenty of gas.
We're saying that's why they're jacking it up.
No,
somebody's putting the bill on.
We have that gas here. We're the largest producer of gas. The bottom line is they want to force us to stop using gas and have electric cars, which we will not own. They will be owned by the bank, and as long as you're a nice person to them, they'll let you use it. Once they don't like you, they'll have to walk. That's where we're headed.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's here. It's all here.
It's in a development stage.
No, it's way developed. It's been developed. The first car that ever drove around on 4 wheels was an electric
Instead of
car.
let him tell the story because he was on
They
the
caught
roll.
us on that bomber. Oh, they caught us. The fourth night out there, they captured us.
Right.
6 of us. Took us down to the front gate. The only thing that saved our ass.
It was in the back of your school. You could say that was a jungle gym.
Let me finish. We want the stuff you took off that bomber.
Did you guys take stuff off the
Yes.
box? Yes.
And the reason they caught us is Harold Clemens went up there with a hacksaw. And he saw the steering column. He said, Boeing, we took that home. The Air Force come along and said, we don't work like that.
Right.
Let's start watching this. Right. Here's these kids. We got on it. We were sitting on the atomic bomb. Fucking atomic bomb was about the size of your car. It was laying in the mud.
Right.
It was blue. And we went over and sat on it. We thought it was fake because we didn't know it was a real atomic bomb. And they backed the plane
So
in.
do your nuts glow?
Yeah, harmless. I mean, it's an atomic bomb, but it has to be triggered. The thing that saved us when they came to the house in a 57 or 58 blue Ford station wagon with yellow Air Force rifle on it. 4 people got out. One of them guys did some type of work for the Air Force on extraterrestrial research. He was present when they came over there.
Because he knows
And the
this
only
guy's
thing that
been
saved our ass is pretty much what you said. It
contacted.
didn't save our ass. They sat us down in the living room and said, who's got the manual to that bomber? I said, I do. It's upstairs. Go get it. It was as thick as this. It was under the seat. The co-pilot seat. When you opened it up, it had big clips on it.
You can put pages in and take pages out. You push down on a button, you can add to it. It told the range, the fuel, the altitude. It told you everything you wanted to know about that airplane. And you left that in the bomber. We want that book.
So they were stupid to leave that in the bomber in the backyard of your school.
Right.
It's not your fault.
I'm glad you listened.
Right.
My mother was out in the kitchen.
I listen to everything.
But I keep talking.
In the living room, she said, "Could I ask the people a question?" She's a stupid Greek broad, right? No brains, money hungry. She says, "Could I ask you a question?"
How much is that worth?
She said, "Would it have helped if you put a fence around that plane before you left? Would it have helped if you blocked it off with some soldiers to keep people off it?" And everybody shut their mouth because now heads are going to roll. Right. The woman just opened up and answered the question. Yeah, right. Who's sleeping over on the ball game? Yeah, right. Well, you know these kids are fascinated with that friggin' thing when it takes off. They're dying to see what the inside of one of them looked like. And we did get to see what the inside looked like. There was a lever in there. And Bobby Duffy was sitting in the back seat. The ejection seats are still in it, right? He started pulling on that lever. It was yellow. And one of them guys did tell us, if we pulled that lever all the way back, you probably would have got killed. All that. What's going to happen? He's going to reject the 300-pound canopy off that airplane, which was armed, and the seat's going to go out right behind him. Right. So if you were anywhere near that seat, that canopy, that lever, we could see these hooks. When you pulled on the lever, you could see these pins sticking out of the side of the airplane that these hooks were lifting on. So we stopped. Once you got to a certain point, you said, the canopy weighs 300 pounds. It's blown off with a 20-millimeter charge, and the seat is right behind it. That's how another come in after hearing all that shit. So wouldn't it help if you put a guard around that? Yeah. It was embarrassing to the Air Force. Right. What's this business about? Fuck me and my finance guru with a loud exhaust. What's this business about an atomic bomb laying on the ground next to it? What's that all about? I mean, somebody's ass is going to roll over this shit. You leave a plane parked over there with the atomic bomb, you just go off.
That's just the, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the Air Force and the military mind is so, like where Oak Ridge is, right? Yeah. The ship they left there just hanging around. And see, the real interesting thing about the Manhattan Project, that it wasn't just about the atomic bomb. They were going after other types of physics that make the atomic bomb look like a firecracker. Right. And the hydrogen bomb came right after it, and then there's other stuff that we haven't been privy to that are way more exotic and dangerous than atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs. They're like time travel.
Yeah.
That's the same guy.
What they told Betty Andreasen was, and you will look her up, she died last year.
Betty Andreas.
Right. And her daughter Becky is still
We'll
alive.
look that up,
So,
guys.
and they
Betty
were
Andreas.
friends of Barty and Betty Hill.
No, they never knew each other. They were both on Merck Griffin. Who was that? Phil Donahue.
Yeah.
Who's married to Bill Thomas's daughter? The Thomas girl.
Marla Thomas.
The guy that's married to her.
Right.
He had a show.
Right.
Phil Donahue.
Yeah.
Had both Betty Hill and Betty Andreasen with 4 priests in black and white on his TV show one morning. Phil Donahue.
Yeah.
And the priest said, the women said the guys with the almond eyes aren't people.
Right.
They're not real. They're robots.
Right.
They come out into our environment because it's a hostile environment.
They're a genetically engineered.
Right.
They're like clones. They're like clones.
They do all the dirty work.
Right.
If you want to call it.
Right. Right.
Betty Andreasen said she was so scared when they came through the kitchen door.
Right. Like without opening.
Exactly. They came through. She saw the ship land out in the backyard.
Yeah.
And when they got whoever was over there looking at the scene, said, yeah, something was out here. The leader came through. He passed through the door.
Without opening it.
Right, he passed through it.
Right.
And 3 shorter ones. I can't remember if it was 3 or 2 shorter
leader.
ones had to come in behind him.
Right.
They weren't abreast.
Right.
They had to follow through that opening in the door behind him. One of them stopped in the kitchen. And he held a white ball glowing in his hand. She was under hypnosis, Betty Andreasen. Right. He paralyzed her father, who was at the kitchen sink, who would not be a problem. It didn't bother him. Right. He just froze at the kitchen sink. He stayed there. 2 more came into the living room behind him. He was kind of like
I don't really have a description of him, but he was more or less human than anything else. And
Who, the leader?
yeah, the one that was in charge. Betty Ann Grayson picked up the Holy Bible off the coffee table. She was so scared, and Becky was sitting right next to her daughter, who was still alive. And she said, "Please don't harm us." She showed her the Bible, and the leader took the Bible. He waved it over his head and created two more.
Right.
And passed them to the people behind him. They read our Bible instantly.
Right.
They knew the contents of our Bible instantly. Instantly. He, in turn, gave her a copy of their Bible.
Right.
And she asked, "Will I ever see you again?" And they said, "If we have to watch our speed when we leave, if we exceed the speed of light for 1 second, 64,000 years goes by on that time."
Right.
In 1 second of where we're going, what we're doing. So it's pretty mind-boggling of time versus, yep, you'll be dead 64,000 years. So now when you look at the pyramids and Jesus Christ being 3,000 years old,
Right.
this was a young planet when he showed up here.
Right.
Somebody sent him down here to straighten this place out, or somebody sent that boy here for some
And
reason.
he wasn't the
Reason.
only one. There have been many, many other
Whatever,
lucky
they
bastards.
chose him to be the boy, the main boy.
Well, for that, it was in our mythology, yes.
If you was his father, why would you send him into a hostile environment? No, he's gonna die.
Well, because if you read Luke, right, and that whole scene from Good Friday, from Palm Sunday to Good Friday, he's riding into town and he's king. You know, they're putting the palms down. They're, "Oh wow!" And all the Pharisees and the rabbis are going, "He's going to be our poster boy. This is going to be good for business, right?" So he comes in. He's got a great thing. Tuesday, he goes to have lunch with those guys. That's when he throws some money changers out, right? Because, you know, hey, why you got money changers in my father's house? Get out, right? So they go, "Uh-oh, this guy we can't control, and so we got to get rid of him." So that's what happens. But on Thursday, when the Last Supper occurred, they get up, they're staying at somebody's house, and Jesus tells James and Luke.
Okay, enough of that. I'm going to play more of it later. But I just wanted to touch base with you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Alpha. I have to go in town. I'm going to have my eyes operated on later in the week. And so I got to take care of some things. And so I got to go now. Yes. But this guy, he kind of ran into him when he was like 14. So he wasn't, semi-programmed like I was. There is no sound. There is no sound? No. You got to be kidding me. I did not turn the sound off. The little line to microphone is still there. Well, this is a good time to end and for me to figure out why there's no sound. Okay. So I'm gonna come back in a few hours, around noonish, 1 o'clock, something like that. Okay.